where we left off in regards to discussing the request for proposal. I guess what I would really like to start with is questions, concerns, thoughts, changes, anything? Where everybody wants to start at?
What did, we have any thoughts on open house or on viewings? Are we gonna allow people in, or would you rather have picture portfolio just posted that everybody could see the same thing, or what do you think of?
I think that we should, if somebody wants to come and walk through, I think that's only fair. They
By
can-
appointment, or
By
what?
appointment.
After what I just walked through to go back and get those flags, they need to see this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very confusing when you get
Yeah,
downstairs.
it really is.
So I think that viewing by appointment is appropriate, and I do believe for security reasons, we should do that also.
Okay.
So,
Are you gonna add that as a part of the RFP then?
Yeah.
so on your second page, you put square feet down. The property currently has 4 building structures on it.
And so with searching at the end of it, I think you guys saw some of the plans they came up with. I mean,
I couldn't read how many square feet they were.
no, I need to find some decent plans that'll give me the square footage of each individual, location. And it might actually be in the appraisal that we had done also, so I will put the actual square footage in regards to the fire department, police garage, city hall, and the police department, so we'll get those in there.
Are we thinking we're just gonna provide approximate property lines as far as in the alley and stuff, so people know what they have for parking, for, you know, what would be available for, cause that's gonna be the other issue, you know, especially with this much of the lots being taken up by buildings. Say somebody wants to open an office space or open, I mean, I realize there's other public parking back there, but if they wanna offer actual, you know, building parking, it's gonna be tough to do with this
So,
configuration.
well, in here it also says, you know, I believe like, adjacent properties, you know, if adjacent properties go in on the redevelopment, I'd hate to, purchase or go for a survey and spend that much money to have a survey done, and then your adjacent property, like the newspaper, if the newspaper is interested in it, then that property line that we established back there is, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
So at what point do we go and say, well, at this point, we'll have a survey done? Or,
And that might be part of the negotiation at
Mhm.
some point down the road too, to make sure, cause the other issue, not even an issue, but the other thing that's, I guess if I was a potential buyer, I would wanna know that, and I don't even know if it's this wall, but the wall between the outer building and the memorial park is on the property line. And what access I have to any construction I'm gonna do to it would have to be, you know, kinda something, so I guess at some point I would need to know, you know, what restrictions am I gonna, say for instance, as part of the project, I'm gonna remove the westernmost garages or whatever. I have to know what type of, you know, working easement I'd have, where the actual property line is, and then what I'm responsible from there in. So there's gonna have to be some indication of where the actual property lines are, and then what I'm able to do from a construction demolition standpoint as to, even if I wanna access that property, what am I gonna be able to do in the park?
so,
We'll leave it in the back for like everything.
Right.
Stuff like that.
think that it's just feasible for us to have a survey done and have markers put in?
It might be, I mean, they might exist already too, I mean, nothing says they're not something there, but more than likely they're not.
Probably not.
But yeah, it would be nice to know the exact property line and what,
I'm not really sure if we're gonna be able to find it in this back corner back here underneath the pavement, you think?
well, no, and they would, I
Excavated.
mean, they would find, they can set an offset pin or whatever and give you exact dimensions to it too, or whatever, but it might be useful for that, for those purposes. The other thing is too, depending on, so both bounding, you know, property line, shared walls or whatever, you're gonna have a lot of restriction as to what you can and can't do with those properties based on what your neighboring property is going to allow you to do too, so there's definitely some,
Yeah,
I
but
get-
that's no different than buying any business downtown
No.
that have adjacent
no, none at all,
walls, I mean.
but that, I mean, that should be spelled out somewhere as to what is and isn't gonna be allowed.
For our standpoint,
No,
I know, I know what you're getting at, Andy, but I'm not really sure how, I mean, you go buy a commercial building, do they spell it everything out when they buy a
it's
commercial building?
it's probably in the, in,
Okay.
in the property description as to what can and can't be done. You know what I mean?
Anything? I mean, you're in the,
I'm in the middle of-
Okay.
you've got it,
So,
in your building.
yeah, I'm sorry, Doug, we're in the EDA meeting.
Okay,
He's talking about what, you know, with being right next to another,
like there's easements and stuff that are.
They're all
that are
spelled
there.
out in the description of property during the purchase, correct? In your abstract during the purchase,
Yes,
that, all that stuff is spelled out.
it's gotta be disclosed.
Right. So we'll have to come up,
It should be in the county description though. I mean,
a lot of it probably might be, I don't,
Well, we also have to remember, none of this has been actually done because we've been here forever, you know, so.
Well, it should, it'll still say it on the county, that's the courthouse. The exact, how many feet from Flanders addition, the buildings, what it is. That's where we would go to get it.
the actual abstract.
Yeah, but what we're looking at is, moving forward or whatever, when this when this building was created, I mean, obviously the Veterans Park, no easements have been drafted or anything.
Right.
So,
Right.
moving into this, we possibly will need to hire, a survey and then to actually draft easements as we go.
A construction easement if needed as part of the project, yeah, I would assume so, cause if it's a 0 foot, I mean, if there's no actual land between the property line and the, you know, new property and they wanna do some sort of demo, they're gonna need some sort of area to do that demo, I would assume, so. And maybe it won't be an issue, but I'm just saying if it is an issue, we should have some sort of,
Well, there would be some, baseball outside the building.
right, so no matter what it would be, even if they wanted to paint and stuff, they'll have to have access through the park to do whatever building maintenance. And that should probably be something that goes with the purchase, even if it's temporary easement, but
Yep.
maintenance easement.
yeah, because it'd be easier to access that roof from that property than it would be from the other property and put a ladder back down.
Right.
Okay. So,
But I guess
what else?
the other thing is I would include the abstract or whatever we can find from the county as part of the proposal. And then probably, like I was saying before, an album of pictures, at least to start with, even if they are gonna be able to request a viewing by appointment.
If I may, there may be some common wall agreements from the original between what used to be the Lake Crystal Insurance Company and City Hall. There may be some existing common wall agreements that are already there that should probably be disclosed.
Probably be filed with the county though.
Yep.
Yeah, so. we'll
Because
pull-
if the person wants to split it up, are those still there?
Right.
Oh, but it's in abstract, because it was on the Main Street buildings,
Okay.
on all those.
And they're old. Cause even like the corner of the chamber building, it was like 1878 on that abstract, it says what that wall is and isn't. So it doesn't matter if it's 100 years old, it'll probably still be in the abstract.
So maybe an abstract and maybe a title search would be appropriate for both, or for all.
And you never know, there might be the easements in there already,
Right.
which would preclude the need for another survey.
Right.
That'd be a true statement.
Okay. What else? What else did you see anything else up here, you guys?
It didn't, I guess, as far as.
I guess.
Still reviewing
You just said it on tape.
Alright, my biggest thing was the dates that I have listed in here, which obviously I don't think will be ready for release of this, in January. I would think that the release of this RFP, we're looking at, how much longer? How many more meetings do you guys wanna have fine-tune this?
Well, are we gonna, we probably aren't gonna get anything before the, meeting, would be what, the
27th would be the next one.
27th? And with Christmas and all the other things going on, odds are pretty good that we won't get it done then. Right? So,
No, not,
So would you wanna release at the second meeting in January,
well,
or in
how,
that time frame?
but then I should really call the survey, I'm gonna have to do some major, work on this prior.
Well, how much time do you think you'll want? Would you rather have it released to the public in,
February for sure.
February?
Yeah, more so February than January.
okay?
2 months from now?
I'd like to go on vacation, sorry.
Second meeting in February or first?
Probably the first meeting in February, which would be the 14th.
I mean, it can be posted beforehand if you wanted to post it and have it reviewed. Or you don't think it'll be ready for post until the second
I
meeting?
just wanna make sure that we have all the information before we actually post it. Because obviously these people are gonna come in and ask for this information, I just wanna make sure, can they get the survey done? How many easements have to be created? What easements can I find? What, I need to make sure all of this information.
I would start with the first place, I'd spend a day at the courthouse and set up a time that you can go with, I don't even know who's in charge of, that,
Carla.
Carla.
So, yeah, no, that's no big deal. It's just sitting over there.
Because you have to dig in each one of those books and physically look and, you know. Cause yeah, I forgot it was an insurance thing before it was, paper. That goes back a long time, wasn't it?
So, I say February, let's push this out a month, just due to the fact of.
Before we push it out another month, because now we're starting to run out of time, can we find out how much we really don't have and we have to go get, and maybe make that decision in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because if you go, if whoever goes over to the courthouse and finds an abstract and it's not a science project, and find it and in it has the information that we need.
Then
we're
we're
there.
done.
Right,
Then we're done.
so before we push any more, can we make sure we don't have what we need?
Well, and I guess I don't know what your timeline for sale after, so,
So right in here, I have a timeline. So the important dates, release of request for proposal would be Monday, January 3rd. RFP deadline for submittal would be February 14th. RFP proposals will be opened and reviewed on February 14th. Possible interviews or requests for presentation would be in February. Public and neighborhood meetings would be in February. And then not until March. March would be the recommendation to council and EDA on March 14th.
But I mean, I guess I don't know why anybody feels like that would be restricted, even if we pushed it back. I mean, we're not talking about actually turning over keys until November.
Yeah, we're just starting, yeah, we
So
can't.
to finalize a sale, I mean, that would still give you 6 months.
But, as I recall, the last time we talked about this, this is under the understanding that we do get proposals for the whole thing and don't have
Yeah.
to start going down the whole
And
nightmare of splitting it up.
Redo it.
Right. But even then, I mean,
Yeah, this RFP right here is the whole works.
Right.
As
But-
is.
And the goal is, in a perfect world, somebody, 2 people, 3 people, 3 companies, go forward with this, and then in that case, your point's valid, we're good. If that doesn't happen,
Then we gotta
we
go.
don't get a viable proposal, then we gotta go down the whole road of talking about splitting it up, and that's a whole new science project.
but even then, there's not, I mean, there's not. it'd be
But we'll
great-
have abstracts by that time.
Well, the other thing would be, it'd be great to turn it over, you know, when we move out, the same month or whatever, and get it going right away. But there is no back date as to when it has to happen. I mean,
Okay,
there's,
And
yes.
Can I
yes,
just
it
say,
would-
I don't think you should be too aggressive in the, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's gonna have to move out of this building, so I mean, you know, just make sure you give us enough time before we turn it over to somebody else to actually get out of here.
so if we, okay.
Let's just see all
noted.
the abstract.
Don't be so aggressive is what I'm
Like,
saying.
goes up to say, we can always move it.
So
next
we
week.
move out of here in November, we're moved to the new municipal facility in November. This building sits for a month. What cost are we eating that somebody else should be eating? How bad is that?
Not significant, but
Is it
nothing that we.
5,000-6,000 a month even?
Not.
in utilities
When
and
we're thinking
heat?
heat and natural gas.
With the lights on?
Lights, water, but water will be minimal.
Yeah, so. I
So
mean,
that's not a reason to make sure we're out of here.
But if we're sitting on 6 months and Rob still hasn't moved his stuff out, I'm gonna have to say something.
Oh, it's,
I expect we'll start moving as soon as we can. I just, like I said,
We'll
there
figure it
there
out
will
next
be
meeting if
certain
we have to
things,
push it back.
especially evidence and things like that, that we're not gonna be able to move till that building is secured, which means we have to start the process of moving it.
but it.
After
I guess
the other
what I'm
place is
getting
constructed.
at is there's probably no deadline on the back end that's really pushing it. as
No,
far
the
as-
only deadline I would see is the amount of money that we're spending to keep this thing,
Right.
because the city still owns it, and if that's not a prohibitive number,
The other,
then then I agree.
the other thing is if the next owner can't take it over in November and December and they're planning on doing a large amount of work, it's probably gonna happen in the spring, especially if there's a lot of exterior work anyway, just because of the way the building.
I would rather not sit on this building no more than 4 months, I think.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that if push comes to shove, I don't think having a hard deadline in November is an actual deadline that we need to be concerned about. I mean, if everything's in the works and it happens in December or January at the first of the year, or the beginning of the next fiscal year, you know, and maybe that works out better for the purchasing party too, to purchase it
In a
January
different
1.
year.
Right. I mean, all those things I don't think should be a deal breaker, depending on, like, so for instance, somebody gets a construction loan or has a construction loan, if maybe they wanna purchase it the year, you know, in 2022, because it works out better for loan issues or for financing. But then again, maybe they wanna purchase it in 2023, the year of the construction, you know, so all those things kinda, I don't think we should set a hard deadline as to, oh, we have to be out of here. It's gonna work out, whatever's gonna work out best with the next owner.
But I believe that a lot of our questions, if we knew what the abstract said, because City Hall's been City Hall since 1916, so that's over 100 years, but the fire hall was built in 48 and nobody's occupied this 2 buildings. That one, nobody's occupied except the ambulance.
Right.
So the only building that's in question is the
City Hall.
section on the east end of City Hall.
But we will probably have to come up with our own set of construction easements or temporary easements or whatever we
Yes.
want for building access on the western.
Yeah.
But we don't know that yet.
I'm gonna do some research and I'll
Yeah.
bring it back to the table at next meeting.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
But, okay, so that's anything else that we saw in the proposal?
The time between, I'm sure interested parties are already aware of it, but the time between actual advertisement, are we thinking that's gonna be enough time for people to get a really good grasp of what they might not only wanna do, but also what they think is possible?
Well, that's why the timeline is, important, and so, we're suggesting that we're releasing it at the beginning of January, and they would be due a month later, which would be February 14th, which is more than a month later.
Well, right, which is 5 weeks, but
If you don't think that's enough time, we
well,
can
I have no,
definitely.
I have no idea, it depends on what we're, I guess it depends on what we're expecting, if we're expecting site plans and, you know, actual architectural design or anything like that, that's probably not enough time. But if we're just expecting a number and a theory or a number and a proposed plan of action, that's, but the other thing is, if that's the case, and I would assume we're gonna have to do some, so,
So what does the council want? Does the council want a full spread proposal with site plans and the whole 9 yards?
No, because I think that costs the contractor a lot of money to
Right.
do a site plan and all those other things.
so what's our real course of action here, though? Is it gonna be, we're gonna accept a request for proposal, and the one we accept, then we're gonna vet that for feasibility after the fact, to make sure they have the financing and the wherewithal to complete it? And then if it comes back that they don't have the, you know, either the money or the,
It could be an ongoing process
Right.
in the next year.
that's
So-
what I'm saying, so is that what we want? We want,
Well, that's why I
That
have
to
the
be-
possible interviews or requests for presentation.
great,
Yeah. But recommendation to the council and the EDA, it might not necessarily be March, it could be quite longer than that. But do you feel that the time frame that we are putting together is sufficient? So if we're advertising on January 3rd and requesting them back by the 14th, and we're requesting something that does not require any site plans or anything like that, is that enough time for somebody to?
Yeah.
That would be
If it's
plenty
general.
if there's not a site plan and all the other things.
if it's
If
general,
it's conceptual,
yeah,
and they have a plan on how to get it there. you know.
So then when we get those in on that Monday, February 14th, we will open them and review them. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna accept anything. We still have that whole month of February and whatever, we could even go longer to interview and request more information on their proposal, so we fully understand it and we know that they're financially can do it and.
so are we thinking we're gonna want a subcommittee that's not in this room, if we're gonna try to keep it, you know, as blind as possible to the people that are actually making the decision, to go through and do the interviews with the,
I believe a subcommittee would be,
and then they could give
a recommendation.
a recommendation?
Back to the council and the EDA.
Or are you thinking you're gonna have everybody that submits a proposal come in front of council, and then it's no longer a non-biased opinion, because you know what every, you know,
So, and you are proposing that we make a subcommittee?
I probably would.
And when you, suggest a subcommittee, who are you wanting like, at-large like people,
Anybody,
residents?
yeah,
Okay.
non-board members that are,
Okay.
non-council members that are interested would be fine, maybe just 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them. maybe reach out and see if there's, you know, somebody in the banking community and somebody in the construction community.
Or somebody in the retail that isn't interested in buying it.
Right. I guess
Wait,
would
wait,
be,
wait, say that again?
Somebody in the retail or in the industry on Main Street, one of the businesses, that isn't interested in buying it.
Isn't, I heard it is, I'm like, whoa, wait.
No, because that would be,
Yeah,
because then you'd know what to. Yeah, because it wouldn't be a good place to put Doug, because if Doug's got a vested interest in maybe purchasing the property, he couldn't sit on the subcommittee. Well, he could, but
Um,
So if I may, there's a lot that you guys are wanting to do, and for someone wanting to put a RFP together, a month is not a lot of time.
no,
Because of, and I know with this concept that we've been working on, it involves 4 different people to put things together. It's a much larger project than just giving an RFP back to the city in a month's time, because just trying to get contractors and quotes and all that stuff and a business plan put together, maybe the numbers don't work.
so help us out, Doug, in regards to the timeline that I suggested. What do
You
you?
know, I would, advertising in January and wanting it 1st of February, we're still trying to get people together. And then to get a business plan put together times 4 to,
So
you
you're
know, to
like-
do this.
60, 90 days.
You know, 90 days, I think it's good to give people a chance to.
Yeah.
So if we,
Because you've gotta work with
March.
contractors and get quotes and,
Hope everybody shows.
and everybody shows up and you can get quotes and whether you get product and whether you can get, because even now, like the gentleman down in Fairmont that's opening a brewery down there, he's had his equipment on order for 9 months and doesn't have it yet. You know, so especially if you get a end date where you want this project done, everybody's up, and even you guys are at the mercy of, what if your building doesn't show up? And you're gonna be out of here in November, and the
Right.
building isn't there yet. 'Cause
Yeah.
you don't know if that building didn't show up. You know, or the electrical doesn't show up, or, you know, there's a lot of stuff here, and I think you guys are very
Or if the roof
aggressive.
Now, there's 4 states down south that are gonna be looking for stuff too, cause they're completely destroyed, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and that could possibly offset things.
hey guys, no more, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
So now we're back to.
I would say, even if we did it January 3rd or whatever day it was, then you would be talking sometime in April.
April? April would be when you submit, at the first council meeting in April, that you would submit your RFP?
That'd be 90 days.
and then there'd still be a 30-day vetting process, or maybe a 40-day, 45-day
Yeah,
three-meeting
so
vetting
then,
process, where you might have to go through an interview or refine your proposal before we make a final decision.
but would you bring in your subcommittee then?
I'd bring in the subcommittee then to do that,
Mhm.
and I would keep it as blind to the council as possible, so that the council's only presented with.
I've only done this on the government side of this, but I don't understand the whole need for blind. You know, when they go to build the F-35, you know exactly who's bidding, and it doesn't matter, you're still looking at their RFP. I don't understand why that matters. I'm not tracking that.
because we're all neighbors and friends here, and in the military, that's a big billion-dollar corporation versus your neighbor next door.
And it really might not matter, I mean, if there is only one proposal or one viable proposal, that might be the case.
Well, but even if there are, let's say there's 3 or 4, and again, I get that, that's why I'm asking the question, because that's the part I don't understand. So if we do, I mean, so, we gotta look at the RFPs.
Yeah, but we're not gonna base this decision, base it solely on the purchase cost or what we're really.
I'm tracking, that's what I'm
What we're
hearing.
really looking at is the conceptual and what the city is gonna, what Main Street is gonna get as an end product.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grading criteria.
Great.
So we use the grading criteria to grade those RFPs. and it comes from.
Maybe, yeah, maybe that's enough. I mean, I don't know.
I'm missing what we get by having a subcommittee other than an extra layer of bureaucracy. When
Are
we're
you
already
interested in
talking.
buying it?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Well then you'd be, then
No,
why?
I've been down here.
That doesn't make sense. It makes even less sense, that you has to be blind. Because the way you're talking
that's
is
what I'm
like,
trying
I
to
think, like, the way you're saying it is, I feel like you're like.
I just
looking at-
don't want anybody to, you know, have any doubt that this is the best proposal moving forward. you
Well,
know?
but that's why we have
Or
a scoring
fairness, I
criteria.
understand the fairness side, I mean, it is.
We have, the grading criteria, we gotta answer for that, you know, I mean, and there's 5 of us.
How about we see how the 224 First Street goes with that RFP? We'll decide if we need a subcommittee after that.
And they're being open next,
Next council meeting,
and that's the due date for that RFP?
Yeah, I forgot to
27.
read. I have no
27.
interest in any of that, so I'd love to see all. I mean,
I wanna see
Yeah.
it succeed, you know, I mean.
We'll see, if that'll be a beginning or.
But the other
a good
thing,
learning
the other thing is
process.
too.
Yeah.
So the other.
I mean, I think we can all say none of us have any interest. in
The other
it.
purpose for the
And
sub, the other
Slim
purpose for the
Shady.
subcommittee is
Huh?
this.
easy Slim Shady.
If you're gonna ask questions and have interviews with the companies that are making the proposals, that means we all have to get in it has to happen either during a council meeting or we have to form a quorum. We have to go through it all. We have to add a special meeting, it has to be publicized. If you have, you know, just a subcommittee of people outside this room, they can do that on a Tuesday afternoon or do it
But
whenever it
who's-
works for everybody else.
But even on a subcommittee, who's to say that that's no different than us? I mean, they're
They
giving
have
us-
no power to make the decision, all they can do is give us recommendations.
Recommendations.
And they can do it on,
But that's,
Their time.
we're still gonna have to look over everything.
After they're done. It's,
yes.
that's how it works.
The thing is, and it's fine, I don't care. I really don't. But it's gonna be a lot of meetings to figure out. You've been involved with Wold, for example. How many meetings do we sit in with Wold about their park designs? I don't know if you sat in about, I sat in
and we're not done.
5 or 6. So that's 6 or 7 hours of my life that I'm not gonna get back to decide that there's gonna be a park shelter that probably we can't afford going up by the ball fields.
But again, that's why we're here, we took this position to deal with these
Right.
things.
Sure.
Whether it
That's why you
takes
have
us,
some make
whether it takes
subcommittees
us
too.
20 hours of our life to figure this out, that's why we're here.
And in this particular case, it's kind of a biggie.
It is, it absolutely is. And I'm fine, if you wanna,
I guess I
if
don't
you
know.
wanna crack them all open and then sit down with everybody, and maybe, like I said, maybe it'll only be 1 or 2
Yeah, we don't
proposals.
know.
If there is only 1 or 2 proposals, then that'll be a different decision. Are those proposals good enough to accept? Or to consider? And are those the best we're gonna get, or should we?
You know, and I
Market-
think once
market
we
to a
find
wider
out
market.
if the First Street project, how many people look at that, but then again, the people that are interested in this aren't interested in the First Street. project.
No, but I mean, the process is the same.
The process is the same. You know, and City Hall's been there over 100 years, so it's the only time it'll ever get sold. That I'll remember, more than likely.
Well, you can't necessarily put that on the next person, if that's what they wanna buy it for.
To sell it?
Fix it up and sell it.
Well, that's okay. As long as it enhances the Main Street.
And that's the main goal.
Or they subdivide it themselves and sell the City Hall off
Right.
and use this half, and that investor group does whatever, but the conceptual thing to enhance our Main Street, because we won't have another chance at it.
Right.
The concern that I have is that, and maybe I missed it, but the last time we discussed this, we put together a timeline that we're now adjusting. I'm okay with that. But there comes a point where we gotta quit adjusting. Now, I agree with Doug, what I've seen done, I've never seen an RFP come back in less than 60 days. And I think in this particular case, because of the complexity of the problem set, I would be willing to go 90. I think that's wise, but 90 from what? And I'm okay if we push it to February, but then February's the date, and we don't change it again, and we go 90 days from there.
No, I think we should keep it at January, at the beginning of January. to
Depending
advertise.
on what you find at the county.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so what I would ask is that we keep it on January 3rd unless you find a nightmare.
Yep.
And then in which case, we then reserve the right to adjust fire. That I agree with.
So, moving forward, December 27th, we'll make the final decision to go ahead and advertise
Yes.
or push out the date. But whatever that is, January 3rd, if we push it out, then the next RFP deadline for submittal then will be switched to April.
Yes.
We're just basically moving everything out a month then.
Really 2
Oh,
months.
no.
2 months.
But, yeah, April, but then it pushes everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a possible recommendation to council or EDA possibly in May.
Yeah.
Why are we saying possibly? I say we set it, and if we gotta adjust it, we address it, but let's set it.
Okay, we're doing May. The only way that it would be adjusted is if the subcommittee, if we do pursue the subcommittee, then they would have reason to prolong it. But put it down as May, that's what we're going for.
I don't wanna beat a dead horse here or drag us out any longer than we have to, but this is kind of a really big one. And so what I would suggest is, we would not need a subcommittee unless we don't believe the expertise exists on this council to properly judge an RFP. And I don't mean that as a slam on anybody, but I don't know stuff about contracting and building. So maybe the point is we have a subcommittee because there's an expert, disinterested party who understands contractor work, maybe.
Well-
If that's not the case, then I recommend that the council take responsibility for it.
I guess it really depends on what the final RFP looks like. I mean, if we need the construction basically timeline and what they have planned and financials to make sure that they can actually accomplish the project, I guess I'm not qualified to talk on either of those things. So I guess that's kind of why I was getting at a subcommittee that had maybe somebody from the banking sector and maybe, you know, somebody from the construction sector that says, yeah, that's doable or not doable, is kind of what I was getting at.
That I agree with. That I agree
And
with.
the fact that, like I said, if you do it in front of all of us, that's a quorum every time. That means for somebody to come in and interview or have that discussion, we'll have to call a meeting for it, or
Yeah.
schedule it.
I mean, I get that, so life's gonna suck for a little while. I'm with Cody on that piece of it. I'm not so worried about that, because if it comes to that and we gotta do it, then hey, sucks to be us,
No,
we gotta
yeah.
do it. My bigger concern is the expertise.
No, but then that becomes a public though.
Yeah,
at the
okay.
corner. And you have contractors that are coming in, going, okay, this is what we're trying to do, or thinking about doing. And then that's out there. What if there's 3 different contractors?
That's also a very valid point. If you've got somebody that what we would call CUI, classified, controlled unclassified information, in other words, they don't want their proposal to get out.
You won't be
That's a valid
classified
point.
with
I
a
agree.
quorum at all.
Yep, I agree with that. So so the expertise and the quorum piece of it makes the argument we gotta have a subcommittee.
Or
I
at
just
least-
don't-
Or at least we
I'm
should
not-
consider it, I guess.
Consider it.
Well,
It only matters if there's more than, you know, 1 or 2 viable, I mean, after the initial intake of the RFPs, if there's only one one that we can see is clearly viable, and we think it's, you know, a possibility, we just investigate that one and move forward without anything, you know, and we can do that investigation without a subcommittee. You can take it to
so we make the decision, once we receive the
experts
RFPs,
right?
determine whether or not we need a subcommittee,
But
which
I would
then-
say if there's more than, if there's 3 or more viable RFPs, we might wanna consider having a subcommittee to.
I agree with that. The only caveat I would add to it is even if we get 2 and the complexity is such that we look at each other and go, then we reserve the right to call a subcommittee with the proper level of expertise to properly evaluate the RFPs. I agree with that. Which would then allow for, if we had to have a subcommittee, an adjustment in time.
Okay. So, just to clarify, so in April, the first council meeting in April, we will then receive the RFPs, and then at that time, you guys will make a decision if you want to break out into a subcommittee.
I would say between that meeting and the next council meeting.
Okay,
So the next council meeting, we'll make the decision whether or not we're ready to move out, or if we need to get a subcommittee. We may not need to,
Right.
but we may.
You know, and it isn't, for me, in my eyes, it isn't about, how much money they'll spend on this property. It's how they'll enhance the downtown quality of Madelia for the long run.
And that's kind of what I was getting at too with, you know, it's kind of an arbitrary set of, that's what I'm really gonna be looking at too. I don't really care what they buy the place for. I wanna know what it's gonna be as a main street.
Yeah.
Well, so,
Energy.
but to your point, if you look at the scoring criteria, the estimated market value of finished redevelopment is one of the highest scoring criteria. So if that's not gonna be criteria, or if it's not gonna be important, we need to adjust that. But according to the scoring right now, that's one of the 3 20-pointers.
Yeah, but the estimated market value isn't gonna have anything to do with what they purchased.
yeah.
Right. No, but that's not what maybe I misunderstood what the mayor just said. I thought that he just said he's not as concerned.
He's too
about-
looking at the end result.
I'm looking at the end result, not necessarily what the, if this building generates 10 new positions in the city of Madelia and makes another business or two expand on Main Street, and we fill every one of our storefronts completely full, and we have a parking issue on Main Street, now that's what I'd like to have.
And you know I know what to do to fix it. Time to bring it back, time to park it.
Ramp? Oh, I thought you were talking about ramp.
Well,
So the estimated market value of the finished redevelopment is, yes, it's important because obviously we want to have it marketable. We want it,
oh, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I wanna make sure that
Right.
we've got a scoring criteria here.
yep,
That's what I think makes this so complex, is you could have somebody come in and say, we'll buy it for $1, you know, that's what we'll give you, but this is what we wanna do, but you might have somebody that comes in and says, we'll give you $200,000 and this is what we wanna do. But the $1 one is a hell of a lot better than the $200,000.
Because it adds jobs, it adds ambience to your downtown, it brings people to spend money in Madelia, and that's what it's all about.
okay, do I need to recap?
Okay, then we should,
So I'm gonna go and spend some quality time at the county in the recorder's office, looking for any piece of, anything I can.
Christmas presents.
We will continue to dig into the basement for more info. Hopefully we'll pull that together before the 27th of December. We now changed somewhat of the timeline. Our goal is to have everything ready to go out by January 3rd for advertisement. And that advertisement will be out until April, the first council meeting in April. And then after that, it looks like we will be then discussing if we need to branch off into a subcommittee, or any other possibilities that we need to do. And
So maybe put out some feelers, just like I kinda said, somebody in finance
Mhm.
or
No.
on the banking sector, just if that
we-
is gonna be a final qualification, is just making sure that it's
we have the people.
feasible from a, right, construction and finance standpoint.
Yep, and then, hopefully recommendations to council and EDA by May. Did I miss anything?
Only that I would submit that January through April is set, May is tentative.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Have a nice Christmas. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
I got a second and, first, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned.